Hello, Bison family. I hope you all are well and staying safe during this time. I'm Sharon Strange Lewis, Director of Alumni Relations at Howard University. Welcome to Forward Thinking, a Bison Roundtable. Today's topic is education during COVID 19. We're honored to have Howard's best and brightest come together for a thought provoking conversation on this topic. We're also excited to have Dean Don Williams, the Dean of the School of Education, moderate this lively discussion. Dean Williams, take it away.
All right, thank you, Sharon. And greetings, Bison educators, family, friends, and supporters of Howard University. We are happy to have you here today and to talk about a topic that we know that there are plenty of questions around, and that's education. Our schools have been closed for about 2 months. We're now into the summer break. Parents have worked with their children alongside the educators to help students to stay abreast and meet learning objectives. But now we're in the summer, and what is traditionally a summer break was traditionally a time that we are sending our children to camps. We are still faced with a pandemic. So we're wondering how, I know you all are wondering how we are to do this in a way that is safe, but also a way that is edifying for our children. So I have a wonderful panel here with great expertise to talk about some of these issues and to answer some of the most pressing questions. We have amazing talent here at Howard University, and these group of people represent part of that talent. So first, and I'm going to ask them to raise their hand so that they know we know who you are, is Mrs. Catherine Procope. Thank you, Ms. Procope. Ms. Procope is the head of the school at the Howard University Middle School for Mathematics and Science. We affectionately call it MS Squared. Education for her, you should know, is a second career. She has spent over 30 years in information technology, where she managed systems development for one of the big 5 consulting firms. Ms. Procope began her career in education as a middle school mathematics teacher at a charter school in DC. She moved on to become the mathematics department chair, and after moving to a charter high school, she progressed from the mathematics coach to assistant principal and ultimately a principal. We are proud to have her at the head of the Howard University Middle School for Mathematics and Science. We also have Ms. Rhonda Moore. Good afternoon, Ms. Moore. Ms. Moore is the director of the Howard University Early Learning Program, where we serve children who are from age 2.9 years old to 6 years old. She has been in the education field for over 25 years, having served in various positions and levels as an early childhood lead teacher, a curriculum specialist, a program director, and she has worked with children from all age groups from infantry to elementary school. She is a mentor and a coach to early childhood teachers and leaders, having served as an adjunct professor, quality advisor for the quality rating system, and the CDA professional development specialist. She has also volunteered and served on the NACE, which is the National Association for the Education of Young Children Council, on the Accreditation and Quality Assurance Subcommittee. Welcome, Ms. Moore. And lastly, we have Mr. Abimola George, who has been in education for 11 years. He currently serves as our Assistant Dean of Culture at the Howard University Middle School. He was formerly working as a teacher and a behavioral specialist, and also as a behavior technician in several charter schools that are local to us. His efforts in education have centered around restorative justice, and at some point I want him to describe more for our community what that is, social justice, and STEM learning outside Outside of the classroom, he has worked as a project director and a consultant for the Children's Defense Fund, Freedom Schools. He is a senior fellow at the Center for the STEM Learning at the University of Notre Dame, and has worked as an instructional coach through the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to research the effectiveness of culturally relevant pedagogy, something we do a lot here at the university. He is also the recipient of the CAFRITS Award, which is DC government's highest award for public service. So welcome to our 3 esteemed panelists as you help to lead this discussion that is near and dear to the School of Education, our children, how we best support them as educators, but then also as parents. So I'm going to start with the question, and I'm going to dig right into it because it's the question that is the most pressing question I believe that most parents are wondering right now. So basically, we know that many parents are concerned that their children have missed a significant portion of learning during the school closures. Their concern continues throughout the summer as anxiety is beginning to build for what the fall may look like. During this interim, what are some of the suggested activities that you see that families can engage in to support their children academically and socially? And any one of you can begin on that question. I like to really hear your feedback, as I know that you work with different ages of children.
So you want to go in? Okay. So I want to thank Dean Williams and Howard University for having this conversation. I think that it's important that we as a community stay together and talk about some of the things that concern us and work together to move our children forward. This has been an unprecedented time. However, I had a conversation with a parent, and she said to us how excited she was that during this time, her son had learned how to prioritize, how to work on his own, how to submit work online. She said she was working and she was looking at him and she said, well, shucks, he's doing better than I am. So I think that while this has been a difficult time, we really have to stop and take a look at some of the skills that our students have developed as a result. And I think that we've learned that as people, we are very resilient. We get knocked down, we get back up, and we figure out something else to do. So that is what has happened during this time. And as we move into the summer, one of the things I think parents should recognize is because students have been kind of forced to learn some things in a different way, we did some testing here at MS Squared, and we found that our students had stayed the same or gotten even a little bit better in their math and their reading because we were so focused on it. So there's a lot of talk about a slide or a loss, but that may not be the case. So I think that we should really stay focused, especially when it comes to summer. There's so many different things that students can do to go forward and to continue to move forward. But I know you're going to get to that later, Dean Williams, so I'm going to leave that one alone.
And just to add on to what Principal Prokop just said, over at Howard University Middle School, we really worked hard to create that model where at home, the parent becomes a teacher. And this is one of those old models that has started since the beginning of time. And I think that now in this pandemic area, we have to allow them to play that critical role and give them the freedom to be active participants in their child's development.
And Mr. George, thank you. I would go behind that as well. And so we had at the early learning program, we did something unprecedented, which you never hear from, is doing online learning with very young children, so 3s, 4s, and 5s. And so you're going into a territory that's never been done before. And we did get a lot of positive feedback from the families, stating that that although everybody's schedules were very busy, and you had a lot of parents who had older children in the home who were sharing resources, but the children really, I think, gained a lot out of it. And I think especially socially and emotionally, even though we could not physically be together, the children were able to see each other online. And so while there was, we have some of the giggles and some of the distractions, but it was nice for the children to be able to all connect with their teachers and all connect with each other, so that by the time we did our closeout ceremony, we had a lot of tears and a lot of emotional, because we really wanted to see the children. We really wanted them to stay together with each other. And so I think that's important for summer, to make sure that we're still tapping into the social emotional wellness of each other and of children, and even us as adults as well, to make sure that we are supporting all the children and all the families.
Thank you for that. And I'm so happy to hear each of you talk about what the silver lining, even if it was small, may have been during this time of closure. Right now, parents are concerned. As you know, there is COVID-19 that has forced us to close, and that has really upset our community in different ways. But then we also know that there is a lot of articulations around racial injustice that we also would be dealing with too if schools were open. So during this time, can you tell us how potentially you all as educators are preparing for the return of children back in schools, whatever that might look like in the fall, given the fact that there has been a lot more family connection, given the fact that parents are working with their children to be the teachers, as Mr. George stated. Parents really are the first teachers. So I know that skill set is something that many of us can be proud of during this time frame. But as it also relates to what our children are seeing in communities, seeing in the media regarding Black lives. So those are two major topics that I think are on parents' minds about the potential loss that, and I say potential because there may be some areas where children have thrived being at home and learning, but then also what's happening in the media, what's happening in our world, what's happening in front of our eyes in the United States. Can you talk about some ways that you may be working with children and or families for, to help at least even inform your families how you are going to be working with children when we return?
Mrs. Procope really has done a great job in leading us over at Howard University Middle School, even facilitating conversations facilitating those hard conversations that we haven't necessarily had in the past in regards to the role of police, in regards to our interactions with them. And I think it's critical that we as educators are realistic with our children. They have been exposed to what's going on in the world, and they do need guidance. And I think that crisis management is something that shouldn't be overlooked when we're talking about issues of systematic injustice. And as African Americans, we have been going through this before COVID. So COVID is new, but as far as inequalities in our education system, inequalities in our systems as a whole, we've been dealing with them for a long time, and it's our job to make them better than who we are.
I would say too, for the early learning program, one thing that we pride ourselves on is throughout our academic school year is really doing a lot of Black history with the children and doing a lot of activities around United Nations Day and Black Heritage Week, and really teaching children about Black leaders, and we call them Black sheroes and heroes, and really talking about that with the children. And so I would say during the summer, to make sure that still continues, and really talking with children about Black leaders and from Black history. You could talk about Charles Drew and the Obamas, Madam C.J. Walker, and things like that. I know my goddaughter is becoming a preteen, and I'm giving her some assignments at home to say, here, I want you to research these. And so she and I talk a lot online about what she's learning. But I would definitely say to keep, obviously within the age group that they're in, and so you're not scaring them, but to keep the conversations going. We've had former parents from early learning program who are actually participating in the protest because they want their children to be a part of this, and they want their children to be a part of history. So I definitely think it's important for the children to keep having the conversation. And definitely in early childhood, it is when children are having fears, it is meaningful for them to talk about what they're seeing and what they're experiencing. So keep that dialogue open and help them understand what they're seeing. But then you can still have a learning experience around that as well.
And one of the things that we've done, we've been looking really hard at our curriculum and the learning management system at Summit Learning that we use. And we've had conversations with them about making sure that what we're teaching is culturally responsive to our student body. And so we've made some adjustments and changes. So for example, in 8th grade, they teach US history and they teach the Constitution, but they teach the Constitution from a white perspective. And so we've adjusted that so it's from our perspective so that our students can actually really understand the position that Black people have in the country today. We've gone through every single piece of our curriculum to make sure that we are actually providing that instruction to our students so they can understand who they are as people. And just how Mr. George said, we're still working to get a conversation going between our parents and MPD, because I think that students need to understand the entire story, and MPD needs to understand how they feel as well. We talk, middle school is it's a really interesting developmental time frame, the same as Ms. Moore sees a developmental for her students. There's a big change in your body, in your mindset, and in your decision making. And so helping students understand their place in society, understanding their relationship with authorities here and outside is going to help them move forward. And so we're facilitating those things here and involving our parents in that as well.
That is so wonderful to hear all throughout the levels of what we're providing here at Howard University. And I want the audience to also know that this is not something new for Howard University, nor the School of Education within Howard University. This is our regular everyday activity of what we do. We try to teach students in culturally affirming ways. So with that being said, I think you're hearing some examples of how we do that. I know for sure, Ms. Moore in the early learning program, those students who are, again, from the age of 2.9 years old to 6 years old, learn the Black National Anthem. We have them perform it every year at our commencement exercises, and they know all the words. There are many adults who can't say that, but our 4-year-olds, our 5-year-olds are able to sing it with so much joy, and it really warms our heart when they do that. So knowing that this happens on our campus, my major concern is, as a dean, is to have capacity building. So the things that we're doing here at Howard, I want more people to know about and be able to replicate in their settings wherever possible. So you all will see and hear, if you follow us on social media, we'll put some resources in the chat, or either it'll be sent to from the alumni development associations, what kind of resources that we are utilizing. And we're looking to host webinars. And these webinars are primarily geared towards educators because that is our space. But we are going to be talking about how to talk about race. We're going to be talking about how to develop and cultivate an anti-racist pedagogy and anti-racist learning environment. And that's not just for the teachers. The principals, superintendents, and other educational leaders need to know how to have that kind of learning environment so teachers feel comfortable in having these kind of dialogues that are necessary. But in addition to that, we want to make sure that we are also working with educational psychologists, school counselors, and school psychologists as well about how to have these talks about race with the children without dehumanizing how they feel about it. And I've shared the story before regarding my son who, as we were home learning, he's in kindergarten, or was in kindergarten because he's now been promoted to first grade, but as we were home learning, and we just happened to be talking about community workers in kindergarten curriculum, and we were talking about police officers. And he raised the question because he had seen things on TV because they're supposed to be the good guys. So we have to work with educators of how to have those talks and look at what is likely ideal of what we teach, but then also compare that to what the reality is and work with students as they learn to understand that. So going off on that tangent a bit, but that tangent is where we are. That is our identity here at Howard. That's we work to dismantle racism in any ways that we can, and our space is within education. So we're going to ask a little bit further, because as right now, the students in our K through 12 system, as well as in our higher ed system, they may be zoomed out, they may have fatigue of talking to people via the platform that we're talking on right now. I know that it has been sort of a challenge of working with your children at home, with of you becoming the teacher at home. So I want you all, if you can talk about some of the importance of giving children a balanced summer, recreational summer. Because I know many parents are still trying to introduce curricular concepts. If anything, I think parents are really able to see now where their children are academically. That has helped them to come to see how well they're performing in the different subject matters. And so they may be continuing that over the summer to make sure that they're on par. But can you talk about the other part of what's so important for our children during the summer? And that may be some of that recreational time.
I can go with young children. It's always interesting because the simpler, we know that the simpler you make it, the better. And so we do a lot of the 5 senses, everything sensory. And so, and things that don't have to be expensive, things that could be right around your home, things that we do in a classroom on a day-to-day basis. So we've done shaving cream, we've done homemade Play-Dohs, we've done something called oblique, which is the cornstarch and water. You can, make your own sidewalk chalk. You can do all kinds of things. And so just the simpler you make it, the better. You still need a balance. They still need outside time. They need a rest time, especially the younger children need a rest time. And they need a quiet reading time. So even if they're not exactly reading, but they need to have that reading downtime where they're looking at books, the TV is off, no computer, no tablet, that they're just focusing on that. And I know that, that's something that even my parents did with my brother and myself, is that, it's like, look, go outside, turn the TV off, read a book. But with younger children, make it about sensory and splashing in water. As they get older, you can increase with scavenger hunts and outside. And as they continue to get older, put the language and literacy on them and have your children do journaling, those kinds of things. And then do a healthy balance of that and outdoors. And now that things are reopening, if you are able to visit family, still within the social distance, to still be able to have those kind of those small knit communities of family to be able to get together and socialize, because the children still need that social emotional contact.
Ms. Moore is so right about the social contact and also about staying safe. I think one of the things we found so much with our middle school students is how much they missed each other. And while I agree totally that there may be some concerns, as Dr. Williams said, about your student maybe losing ground and you want to make sure you need to continue to study, but just like we as adults don't like to continue and work, students are the same way, and they need some downtime. And that means that as parents, we have to responsibly, just like Ms. Moore said, let me have your phone, put your computer away, it's time for a break. And breaks can be lots of different cool things. Middle school students can cook. Let them, show them, this is how you make breakfast. Or and reading and journaling. We found that we have so many budding writers here at our school and won several awards, and we're excited about that. Get them journaling. How about writing some poetry about what they see going on and as a way to express themselves? And this is their time, and they love to share it. So finding other things for them to do that actually turn out to be educational on the other end is a really great way to keep them from feeling like, oh, I'm still doing schoolwork. And I agree, most Latin countries have siesta, and I think if we could take a nap, we could. Yeah. So have break time in the middle of the day. There isn't anything wrong with that, but really, and a lot for middle school students, scheduling is really important. And so it can be a schedule and not feel like a schedule at the same time, just to keep them from staying in the bed all day, looking at the phone all day. So maybe, if it's at 12 o'clock, hey, come on, let's make some lunch, or hey, let's take a break, but give them some kind of structure, but it's still fun and it's not all school.
And just to add on to what Ms. Moore and Principal Prokop just said, just maximizing on who they already are and letting them understand that it is a teachable moment. I think that is really important. And even taking advantage of some of the online resources that are already available that are free. And just off the top of my head, I'm thinking of Reebok has a program called Box, and that Box program offers a free running curriculum that you can use. I believe it's 180 days of different activities. So being aware of the resources out there, maximizing the things that they already have, and using everyday things that you already do in your household, like something as simple as watching TV. Being that this may be a household activity, you can put the TV on mute, allow the subtitles to go, and then ask the child to explain what you're watching using the things they've read online, and that can work on fluency and comprehension. So there's a lot of different things you can take advantage of in the household, but getting them outdoors, getting them, allowing them to get some of that energy out is important. But it's not only important for them, it's important for yourself as well. Those type of things can be therapeutic. I know as an adult myself, I take advantage of it as far as just trying to be active. So doing those activities with your children can go a long way. And that's really where I see that recreational stance at.
Well, I certainly like the idea of having a siesta even for adults with the nap and the break time. That is generally very refreshing for all of us, including our children, of course, to be able to participate in. Many of you talked about a schedule. So can you break that down a little further? Because in this schedule, what I'm hearing from you all is academics, but in a different way of what we normally see academics. And then also that recreational time. Can you talk about the importance of a schedule, or is it okay that it's the summertime for us to just be free? Or is there great value in having a schedule for the children, and especially as we talk about it from a developmental sense?
I would say there's great value in having a schedule. Even though you still want to allow for flexibility within that schedule, but I think having a schedule, especially the younger that they are, you want to be able to keep them on their morning breakfast routine. You want to be able to get them to have some kind of gross motor time outside in the morning, some learning time in the morning, having the lunch and the nap time, even at home, and then having some activities and things in the afternoon. But you can, the way I look at it, excuse me, and in the early childhood circles is that everything is learning. So you don't have to be scripted, in that way, but everything is learning. So we teach parents to do, you can recycle your water bottles. I'm drinking from water right now. You can make sensory bottles. You can take empty paper towel dispensers and put them all together and make, simple machines and put a marble down it and see what happens with gravity. And if you have little cars, whatever, so everything that they're doing is a learning process. We talked about cooking. Little people can cook too, right? So they can make, their peanut butter toast, or, they can make their fluffernutter sandwiches, or they can make simple puddings and things like that. So everything is a learning process, but you definitely need to keep them on a schedule, because otherwise you're going to get where they start getting cranky, and then you're going to get off schedule. And if you get off schedule, then it's going to be hard to really do any type of learning at all. And so I definitely think having that downtime during the day, even if they're not napping, they need to have a quiet time by themselves, whether they're in their room reading, they're in their room journaling, they're in their room drawing pictures, but that there's no social media, there's no media, there's no TV, there's no telephone, there's nothing, and it's just them having the downtime.
And Ms. Moore, I believe you're speaking on mindfulness. This is having those moments of mindfulness, which are really important for children, because they need to go through that process of metacognition, like thinking about how they think about this world. And that's personal. And creating a schedule for them to continue to operate also combat summer lag, because summer lag is a very real idea. Some of our students who don't participate in summer camps or aren't involved in summer school, by the time they get back in the fall, they've gone 2-3 grade levels back on their reading. And this is one of those things where you want to make sure that your child's mind is still active over the summer, even in an environment of a pandemic that we're in.
Schedules, and especially if the schedule is made with the child, are important. So if you're a parent who is at work and your middle schooler is at home, having a schedule when they're home is really important, because without one, it's probably going to be sleep until noon, then
Mhm.
phone all day. And those are not things that you want to perpetuate, because that makes it so difficult to go back to school.
Mhm.
And so having a schedule that they come up with you is really key, because that's a learning process as well. And even if part of that schedule is, okay, for 1 hour, you're going to be doing a little bit of schoolwork, like maybe not as much as you'd have if school were in. And then you'll have this time. And just like Ms. Moore said, the time when the technology is put to the side. Because we have moved to distance learning and students have been forced to be online even more, it's really important for us to create spaces where they don't have it, so they can, like Mr. George said, have those mindfulness moments to get back, some calmness, and then go back again. So I agree, Dean Williams, the schedule is critical.
Mhm.
I love what you're saying here, and this whole notion of the mindfulness learning, and also, Ms. Moore, what you talked about, where everything is learning, I think is important, key for our students. Um, Going a little bit further for those students that are in those transitionary spaces. So for instance, Ms. Moore, in the early learning program, these are students who will be entering kindergarten or the
Mhm.
first grade. Ms. Procope, these are students for you that are going to be going on into high school. And I know there are people on this call who have concerns about their students who have graduated high school and will be going on into college. If we can talk about that transitional space and the social emotional learning or component behind that. We brought up SEL, which we talk about a lot in education, which stands for socio and emotional learning, and how we can help to cultivate our children to be strong thinkers, critical thinkers, and understand their feelings and how their actions impact others' feelings. So for that specific target age group that did not have the full opportunity to close the door on this part of their education and will have to go into what is now going to be an unfamiliar educational space for them, how do you support families to work with those particular children in those transitionary ways?
That's a really good question. And so for those children who are leaving the early learning program who will either transition into K or will transition into first, we want to approach everything as, like I said, so if I said before, like everything is a learning process, approach it as a scientific theory and scientific inquiry, right? And so you want to be able to, anything that they're learning and experimenting with, you want to be able to, as the adult, the parent, the grandparent, be able to say, okay, why is it that this is happening? Okay, why did the seasons change? Okay, so we were out of school from, for the spring semester, and now we're into summer. What happens when the seasons change? What happens, after summer? What's going to happen when we go back to school? What's going to happen in the life cycle of a butterfly? Those things, and talk about those hypotheses and those scientific inquiries, and then especially with children who are going into from the preschool and pre-primary into the kindergarten and first grade. That's why the journaling becomes very important, and the language and literacy become very important. You can make, when you do have to go to the store and you have to make simple shopping lists, and we say, okay, we're going to get these, your shopping list has these 3 things, you're going to help us get those. When they come home, if that means they have to follow a recipe, make everything about a language and literacy focus for them, and that includes the STEM fields as well. You can pull everything back into STEM. There are programs now online that are teaching children how to do coding and things of that nature, so that they always stay involved and they can be fun. And there are simple board games, even not the technology of the computer, but there are board games that are teaching children how to code. And so you got to keep them engaged educationally and making it fun without them realizing that you're making it fun.
We were really purposeful in making sure that our promoting eighth graders had some type of experience with us. We worked really hard and had a virtual ceremony for them. And all throughout the time that they were with us, we were having conversations about what it means to go to the ninth grade and what you have to do in the ninth grade. And I'm proud that we have counselors per grade level, and our eighth grade counselor, as well as staff members, continue to stay in contact with our eighth grade students while they were distance learning and still today, to make sure that they are appropriately connected with their target high school. We're really excited, and this is something that our school has done since 2005 when it was developed, that we provide that take-home technology to our students, and as long as they stay with us through eighth grade, we don't ask for it back. So we're excited that our students are starting the eighth grade. They have whatever technology they're going to need, and because of the learning management system that we use, those critical thinking skills that they're going to need when they get to high school, they've been developing. So they are asked to, they may be taught a lesson, but then they have the option to determine what resources do they need to reinforce that lesson. And they've been making those choices themselves. They've been deciding when it's time for them to take their content assessment to show mastery. So they've been learning that all along while they're with us. And so we're really excited that they are absolutely more than prepared for when they get to high school, but really happy that they've been and I'm really excited about the partnerships that we have with the schools in DC, because those high schools have been reaching out and touching those students who are coming to them. And so I think that they're definitely ready for their next step.
And I would concur with Principal Prokop about that. Allowing our students to really put their foot into like the next ideas of tomorrow that they have been developing. Like all these children, they have ideas for their future. They have ideas for their dreams. And we as educators play that role of developing those dreams. And I think we spoke about it earlier in regards to even talents. Talents is such as like writing poetry, or even staying connected with them and connecting them with poets outside of the classroom or outside of their regular reach. Being that we are pushing for this age of technology, we at the middle school, and I would say this program has really done a good job in creating a virtual learning environment so students can really maximize that independent learning. Independent learning is something that, because of the age we're in, it's going to be important for kids to know how to learn on their own, and allowing them to keep the technology, allowing them to take that on to their next academic triumphs. It will really prepare them to not only be okay to be in that environment, but to be able to excel.
Yes, and independent learning, I think, is one of those areas that we referenced earlier regarding the silver lining of this. I do think that our students are going to come out of this as being stronger in many respects of that. The academic part will come, and I know that our educators are also aware of the potential losses that may be there. But what I do want to make sure that we encourage our community is to not to drill the language of that loss with the students, because they will pick that up and carry that with them. So while internally as an educational community, we understand that there likely will be some loss, and we will have to make the appropriate assessments to get a better idea of where those losses are, and then work and develop a plan to make sure that we're filling those necessary gaps and keeping them on the pathway for their learning objectives for their particular grades. It's not something that we're going to be talking to the children about largely. We don't want that kind of conversation or declaration to be something that children will take away with them. We want to keep making sure that we are affirming to them, that we are positive, and that we are certainly invested in their future. So during our talk today, you all have kind of casually mentioned some kind of resources that you would recommend. There are tons of them. There are many free resources that I think that parents have learned about, that we have also shared with our community as it has come to us, offers that we have been given that we gladly share with the community as well. And for those community members out there who are taking notes right now, I want you to know that we're going to put some of this in the information that will be sent to you who are registered for the workshop. But if from the top of your heads, if there are some very trusted resources, as we discussed, talking about anything academic related to help keep them engaged over the summer, but then also related to the topic of race and racism.
One resource that I think the parent could take advantage of is code.org. It's a resource that speaks on to what Ms. Moore, I think, brought up earlier, the disciplines of STEM, science, technology, and engineering, and mathematics. We really need to like be okay with using those resources and understanding for our children that they can be part of they can become teachers as well. If you look at platforms there, and there are even, safe platforms through YouTube or whatnot, where they can create videos that can teach certain skills to other kids who just may need to hear it from a child's perspective. I mean, something as simple as tying a bow tie. Like, I remember myself, I learned how to tie a bow tie on YouTube. So I just don't think we should dismiss some of those minor resources that they do use for recreation, but we can turn those into very teachable moments.
I like pbs.org, just to name one. They've got a wide range of activities and videos, but they also have videos about how to talk to kids about race and racism. And they're at different levels, so you can determine the level of your student, but it is, it's very kid friendly, and students won't feel like they're being talked down to or patronized. It's something that they can really connect to. So that's one I would absolutely recommend.
Ms. Moore, you're still on mute.
Okay, so one thing we were sharing with resources with the early learning program parents, and we had talked about as a staff, was Sesame Street and communities. And so they talk about our resources of the social emotional learning for children and how to talk to children. There was a discussion talk series on NBC, or I think actually it was CNN, my apologies, it was on CNN about a month or so ago. And they were talking with the children, and the characters were asking questions, well, what is COVID, and why do we have to wear masks, and why do mommy and daddy have to protect me when we leave our house, and that kind of thing. And so I think extending that into the community's resource to help children really understand what's going on, so that we can sort of help them with their fears, because it is like the younger they are, the more meaningful it is for them to talk about it. And that will include race as well, right? So, you know, what happens, and, you know, why is my skin color different, or why am I treated differently? And so while we don't want to focus on the negative, we do want to definitely address the social emotional wellness, because you have to. The children want answers, and so within the confines of what their age is, and how you can share that information with them. But that's another reason why, going back to the routine, why a routine is important, so that they understand that my life still has some semblance of normalcy, and that mommy and daddy are taking care of what they need to take care of, and I can still be a child, and I can you know, have fun.
Thank you. Those were definitely helpful. And I'd like to share a few with the group too that I have personally used. Ms. Moore, the first one that I was going to cite was the Sesame Street CNN partnership around talking about, they did two, one on COVID-19 and then also one on race and racism. And you all should still be able to get that, even though they have played already. There's as children are missing camps right now, there is a company, I believe it is, it's called Kids Out and About. and it's free. And this is a resource that if you wanted to learn a second language, if you wanted to learn how to play an instrument, if you wanted to learn, and it's more academically based. If you wanted to learn arts or solving equations, there are a number of workshops that you can have the kids engaged in and that are absolutely free. It's called Kids Out and About. So I wanted to promote that one. I came across one resource that I think is called Woke Kindergarten. I'll make sure I'll get the actual link, but it's about reading. It's about literacy, but it's about literacy that again comes from a culturally affirming perspective. Scholastic, I love that website because it is unit driven. And for my educators out there, when I say unit, you know exactly what I mean is that we're approaching a topic, but we're going to approach this topic and we're going to approach it from a literacy perspective, but then we're also going to include science and math under the same topic. So I remember doing one on amphibians and we were learning about frogs, and then my son had to count out how many jumps each amphibian was going to get to a certain mark. So here there was science, there was literacy involved, and then there was measurement with math, all under one larger topic. And he loved when we were able to do things with Scholastic. One very helpful resource is our Smithsonian museums. So as you know, here in DC, our Smithsonians are free for you to attend, but now that they're actually closed, they have developed wonderful resources for families to be able to go to the zoo virtually. There's the Panda Cam. They can see what the pandas are doing at all times of the day. But our newest museum, the National Museum of African American History and Culture, have a number of resources. So this is my go-to resource as we're learning how to talk to children about race and racism. And they have wonderful materials to help you do that. And when the world was open, and they actually had workshops for parents with young children to attend that. There's an organization called Certificate, which gives plenty of resources about activities that are COVID-19 related activities. So some of it may be camping and other opportunities for families to get out and about. And the last two that I'll mention, one is through an organization called Mid-Atlantic Equity Consortium. Every Thursday, they have a family room webinar. And this family room webinar invites people in and they go over a number of topics that are prevalent. And so they've had several on COVID. They've had several on the topic of race and racism. So I want to make sure that I will be putting all of these type of materials so they're delivered to the community that's listening today. But then in addition to that, the School of Education is going to be hosting on our website a number of educational resources that parents and educators can go to that we feel are trusted resources, organizations that have been doing this work prior to this being such a media fascination right now. A huge ally of ours is Teaching for Change. So we'll have those links on our website. But in addition to that, I know Howard University overall is producing content for the community to look at. So if you go to the alumni page from the Howard website and you click on Bison Together, and then under education will be many of the resources that we are citing today during our time. And the last thing that I'll say about how we can work together to get through this, the very important component is that we're not doing it alone within the four walls of our house, that we are reaching out to our community. So if you belong to a meetup, or if you don't, you may want to consider looking at a meetup. If you may already be connecting with other people in the community through GroupMe, there are resources to allow us to have that online connection. But our children need to be engaged with other children of their age group, and virtual is the way that we're doing it right now. But parents also need support. Parents need the support to know that what they're doing is fine, that what the balance that they're trying to create to get ideas, to get the same kind of resources that we're talking about within this environment. Many of them I've learned through parents and the networks that I belong to. So I want to encourage you all, even though we are semi-quarantine, depending on where you are, that you still should be able to reach out to your community, because although we're more so physically distancing, we shouldn't be social distancing. That helps to keep us together and allow us to still continue to thrive. And the last thing, I said it was one more thing, but virtual camps. There are some camps that are still happening, but they're in virtual ways. So you may want to look at your parks and recreation within your particular community to see if there are any camps that your children can be involved in, but still through a virtual manner. And there's different ways that they structure that. So with that, I want to invite you all to continue to follow our pages. Every single one of the units that are represented here, the middle school, the early learning program, the School of Education, have social media pages that we will be posting relevant content on, not only to support our learning community, but we're here to support the entire community. So please do stay tuned with the work that we're doing. Before we end for today, I wanted to ask our panelists, well, first I want to say thank you. Thank you for taking out this time this Friday and our lunch hour. I certainly enjoyed hearing the great things that you all are doing, and so very proud to be associated with each one of you. But I wanted to ask you if you have any final things that you want to speak about regarding the middle school and the early learning program, and things that you want the larger community to know.
I would just say another resource that I'm finding as well is online library. And so your local library are actually doing the same thing. They're doing virtual reading time, and they're touching on topics of health and safety and wellness, as well as race relations, and they're gearing it towards children of different ages. So I would encourage you to contact your local libraries as well online. What I would say is about what we do with the early learning program is just to encourage and make sure that with young children that we start the conversation early about being proud of who they are, so that our children engage in public speaking in different areas in different ways. And so I really thank and credit the teachers for that, and thank and credit them for what they do, because we really want to encourage them to be proud and to step into their majesty about who they are and what they do, and that kind of thing. And then what I would just say lastly is for parents is take care of yourselves too. It's, you have to take care of yourself, because you are also on the front line as well. No matter what your profession is, you are doing all that you can do. And so cut yourselves a break. Sometimes too. And so when it's time for your child to go outside and play ball or to have fun and splash around in the water and the sprinkler or whatever, do the same thing and have fun with your child too, and you can still engage your child in the summer, even though we're having this kind of weird summer schedule that we have, but enjoy it.
I think that whenever I have to come into work, I'm in awe that Howard University has all of these resources just right here. Physically, our school is, I could reach my hand out and touch Dean Williams. And that's not just the physical connection, but there's also the collaboration that happens on this campus between our middle school and not only the School of Education, but all of the other schools on campus is phenomenal. And I can't stress enough how amazing Howard is to have this kind of family that really is focused on our children and our people and making sure that we're advancing and really making a difference in the community. One of the things Ms. Moore was, when she was talking about her children, if you have not heard them sing the Negro National Anthem, you are missing a treat. It must be on YouTube somewhere, because it's really amazing. And for our children, it's interesting, if you ask a student from our school, where do you go to school? I go to Howard. Not Howard Middle School, just Howard, because they feel, one thing, Howard has this family connection that is unlike any school I have ever seen. And I'm really proud to be a part of that. And I feel like our students feel that way as well. We're really truly preparing those students for the next level. The majority of our students go to the selective high schools in the city. And we think that that is primarily because our focus is the same as what's going on in Howard University. So when our children step onto the campus and into our building, they're standing on the future, and we're really excited about that. And I think that's what makes us extraordinary.
Wow. And just like the amazing panelists have said so far, Principal Prokop, Ms. Moore, learning is a community activity. It's one of those things where everybody plays a role. And luckily at Howard, we do have a strong community, a community that has history, a community that really has developed leaders since the beginning. And I think now it is very important that because the world is looking a little bit different in 2020, that we're okay with allowing our children to express themselves, but also teaching them how to make those expressions constructive and how they can add to the positivity in the world as it is. Because we already know there's a lot of negativity going on. So we need them to be the facilitators of change. But it's our responsibility to get them there.
Very well said. Thank you all. Social justice is a part of our institutional DNA, and it is personified through every sector of the university, every discipline. I personally believe that it is most personified in education. And I'm not just saying that because I'm education dean, but because education is the foundation for all that our children will do. So we want to work hard to make sure that they have an experience that's going to be an edifying experience, one that's going to be an affirming experience, and one that's going to make us all proud. I'm certainly proud to serve here and to connect with the alumni and other partners within the larger community to make sure that we thrive together because Mr. George, as you said, learning is a community function, and we're going to make sure that we do our part within that function. So please stay tuned for other resources as we work throughout the summer. Thank you for the Howard University Alumni Associations for bringing this kind of webinar and taking us outside of Washington, D.C. and everywhere that you all are today in hopes that you are going to have a great and a safe summer. And we look forward to reconnecting with you all again when we're able to be outside. But with that, thank you again. And I look forward to seeing you all again in person soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, take